Hello, I'm the Culture Gene. With the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, I thought it was important to mention Russia's history of aggression before the Russian-Ukraine war. Because the Russian-Ukraine war is in a bigger context than just Ukraine in itself. As some of you might have known, Russia and Ukraine have been embroiled in this conflict for the past 8 years, even before the recent Russian invasion. In 2014, Russia took advantage of political turmoil in Ukraine and seized and established military control over Ukraine's southern Crimean peninsula and the Luhansk and Donbass regions. But what you might not realize is that this is not a new phenomenon. In 1992, Russia supported the breakaway province of Transnistria from Moldova. This was before Putin, but it was done in a very similar way to what Putin has been doing in Ukraine. In fact, today there are Russian troops stationed in Transnistria. However, this would not be the last time that Russia would support breakaway regions declaring independence and becoming satellite states for the Russian interests. In August 2008, Russia started the Russo-Georgian War, a war between Georgia on one side and Russia and the Russian-backed self-proclaimed republics of South Ossetia and Abkhazia on the other side. The war took place following a period of worsening relations between Russia and Georgia, both formerly constituent republics of the old Soviet Union, after Georgia had mentioned interests in getting closer to the West, to the EU and Nato. So Putin decided to stir up trouble, and he forced the separation of those territories away from Georgia, those being South Ossetia and Abkhazia, in the same way that Putin would later do in the Ukraine in the year 2014. So Russia has had a recent history of supporting separatist insurgents and supporting them militarily and financially, and using those insurgents as an excuse in order to invade and take territories, creating satellite breakaway republics. Russia has also had a recent history of threatening their neighbors and questioning their right to statehood, just like they have done recently with Ukraine, saying that it's not a true independent country. In 2013, President Vladimir Putin raised controversy when he claimed that Kazakhs had never had statehood. The then President Nazarbayev had threatened to withdraw from the Eurasian Economic Union, which is an economic union of interest headed by Russia. And Nazarbayev responded to the comment from Putin, saying that the independence of the country is his most precious treasure and that Kazakhs will never surrender their independence. We also have a similar incident with Finland in 2016, where statements regarding Finnish independence from the Tsarist Russian Empire were made, which implied that Finland is still a part of Russia. And you also have Russian statements regarding the Swedish island of Gotland. The island was once occupied by Tsarist Russia several hundred years ago, but was never officially part of the Russian Empire. Russia has made comments about wanting to buy the island, using threatening, intimidating language towards Sweden, about consequences for not cooperating. This has been in the recent decades. And just recently we have talks from Russia about consequences if neutral countries around them ever try to join NATO, directed mainly towards Sweden and Finland. And considering how Russia has acted upon neighbors trying to join NATO before, it definitely is a threat. But it's not just threatening language from Russia in recent history. There is a history of constant airspace, water and territorial violations made by the Russian Federation. For example, in September 2014, an abduction of an Estonian security service operative was made by Russian forces on Estonian territory. The Estonian security service operative was captured by Russian agents on Estonian territory. The raid involved communications jamming and smoke grenades, according to reports. This incident took place immediately after the then President of the United States Obama's visit to the region and his repetition of security assurances to the Baltic states. This was a clear Russian incursion into a NATO member state's territory. This was probably some sort of Russian probing tactic in order to test the resolve of the NATO alliance with limited operations behind the threshold of a real armed invasion. The problem is, had the Estonian official in this case or his colleagues resisted the capture, fatalism on either side would have been possible and could have been a catalyst for further escalation into a true war, which could have dragged the entire NATO alliance into a full-blown nuclear war with Russia. Russia defended itself by referring to their own domestic security service, the FSB, who claimed that the Estonian operative was on a spying mission in Russian territory and thus justified the action of cross-border operations into Estonia to capture him, not caring about the territorial integrity of Estonia. The agent was set before a mock trial and sent to prison. Estonia's Prime Minister during that time, Taavi Rõivas, condemned the jail term.
A clear and grave violation of international law.
Then we also have a simulated attack by Russian aircraft on Denmark in 2014. Armed Russian aircraft approached the heavily populated Danish island of Bornholm before breaking off in what appears to have been a simulated attack on the island. It was seen as being a very serious incident by the Danish intelligence service, who described the incident as of a more offensive character than observed in many recent years, even during the Cold War. At the time of the simulation, the island in question was hosting a major meeting of Danish politicians and journalists, and Russia had just before made some intimidating remarks about certain Danish politicians. In other words, this was probably part of a Russian intimidation attempt. In October 2014, Russian submarines invaded the waters along the coast of Sweden, which caused the biggest anti-submarine operation in Sweden since the Cold War, and was probably part of an aggressive Russian probing operation against Sweden in order to test Swedish defenses, according to the Swedish Defense Ministry. This is a clear violation of international law and the sovereignty of nations. When the Swedish Foreign Ministry complained about this to Russia, they didn't even get a denial, but rather, instead they simply stated that they've done operations before and that the entire Baltic Sea belongs to the Russian Navy, and that this was nothing of Sweden's concerns. This should also be viewed in a context of Russia having a history of threatening Sweden and putting pressure on Sweden with regard to the island of Gotland, with several air violations and similar incidents occurring many times before and after. In the same year, 2014, Finland claimed 5 violations of its airspace by Russian warplanes simulating airstrikes to important strategical targets. And these air violations was directly after Finland issued a statement condemning what had happened in Ukraine with Russia's seizure of Crimea. You also have a series of assassinations outside of Russia's borders. The most famous probably being the 2018 assassination in England, Salisbury, using the nerve agent Novichok. And you have Russian attempts to support coups in other countries, like the Montenegro coup attempt of 2016. The list of incidents regarding Russia is long, and I could mention many more incidents than just these that I've mentioned here. Because Russia has continuously been involved in these sorts of incidents and aggressive actions, up until even just before the Ukraine crisis, and now war. In fact, just before the invasion in January of 2022, Russian officials issued an ultimatum to the West, demanding written guarantees against NATO's further eastern expansion, retroactively. Ukraine and other former Soviet states, such as Poland and the Baltic states, were to be removed from the list of NATO countries and banned from ever becoming members of the organization again, which is kind of an outrageous demand to make in foreign politics. I've touched upon many examples of Russian aggression to its neighbors and in their recent history, but these are far from all. After all, I could mention the Russian involvement in Mali and the Russian support for the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad and other places who require their own videos in order to explain. But I hope it's clear to most of my viewers that Russia has had a history of aggression even before this crisis and war. I made this video because I wanted to inform people that Russia's aggressive actions are not something that suddenly flared up due to Russian security considerations. Instead, the Ukraine-Russian war is the result of a long history of aggressive politics. It's a culmination of Russian aggression. And I wanted to clarify this because I've seen a lot on the internet recently where they just claim that this war is kind of a defensive war made by Russia. And I don't agree with that. Of course, it's okay to disagree with me. If you feel differently or think that there is something else behind this than just the result of a long history of aggressive imperialism, then you can post your own views in the comment sections and we might discuss it. Anyway, if you have any questions, you can also post comments in the comment section. And also don't forget to push the like button if you liked this video, as it helps with the algorithm. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities. اشترك بالقناة من فضلكم.